how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
To infinity and beyond!
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
It's classified.
You talking to me?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
I can't lie!
Expecto Patronum!
Entertainment X.
You never know what you're gonna get.
For this episode, I sit down and chat with Diana DeGarmo, and we cover everything from her youth to present day. She has a wonderful sense of self, and she shares some of the stories in her life when that was challenged, and how she came back to her true self. And it is culminated in her latest album, GEMINI, which I suggest you check out right away. So I hope you enjoy this episode and keep on keeping on. We're back. I'm Clayton Howe, and today with me is Diana DeGarmo.
Hi.
Diana, thank you for trekking through this weather.
Hey, this is not too bad. It's nice and fally. I like it.
It is very fally.
Yeah.
I was looking, just doing like the research and whatnot on the web before we chatted, and I saw this quote that I think is incredible. It sums you up. Don't let her sweetness fool you. She is power packed with a lot of spice. And I say that because when I saw the GEMINI album release at Sony Hall, must have been like a month ago now, 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. There was a lot of sugar, spice, and everything nice. And it had a really, I just felt like baking. It had like this kind of like, there's just so many, it was like, I say baking because it had you have so many flavors that you mix when you're performing and communicating with the audience. And I'm excited to unpack that.
Thank you. Thank you. I like to be an entire spice rack.
Yes. Oh, perfect. Everything, A to Z. Okay. Music dreams growing up. How did this begin for you?
My mother would have said that I came out of the womb singing. And that's just my first memories were just, that was my natural instinct, was to go out and to sing for people. Yeah. I have vivid memories of performing for my grandparents and going, okay, you sit here and you sit there and I'm going to sing. And there's actually a home video somewhere where my mom says at the end, I bow and nobody clapped. And I kind of peeked my head up and I went, okay, you can clap now. And so it's just always what I've wanted to do as far back as I can remember. I fell in love with music and entertaining. I didn't really know what it was, and I don't think my parents really knew what it was or what it would be. Yeah. They were great about, especially my mom, just trying to help. I think really not really cultivate it, but more just like, here, let somebody else deal with this. Let's put her on a stage over here. And so early on, I just started doing the kids' talent shows and like local community theater, and it kind of snowballed.
Was this a music household? Was there music playing?
I love for music, but no singers, no musicians directly. I have an uncle who's in the industry, kind of further away, and then my mother always said that my grandmother sang, and like she and her brothers and sisters would sing like washing dishes, but other than that, no.
Were there particular artists that inspired you as a kid?
Patsy Cline was the very first one. I came across her greatest hits tape, and I learned it backwards and forwards, and my mom had a fancy tape player where you could skip songs, and I would get very upset if she skipped one. I'd be like, no, you missed it. You gotta go back. So yeah, those are the first musical memories.
I love it. Were these, and I know there was a bunch of different like leading up. Of course, we're going to talk about Idol, but leading up to it, talent competitions or putting you in, particularly talent competitions, not just shows.
Yes, I did a lot of that. Pageants were a big thing, especially growing up in the South. Somebody literally came up to my mom and I when we were at a mall. I was about 5, and I was probably singing or dancing or drawing attention to myself like I tended to normally do. And the woman said, she would be great in modeling or acting, but, does she have any experience in front of cameras or people like that? My mom was like, no. She goes, well, you should maybe put her in some local pageants and see how she does. And cool. It was just kind of my mom, okay. And so we did like my little county pageant. We made some friends and they said, well, you should come do this one. They have talent. Like 12? 8? Oh, no, I'm like 6. Like 5 or 6.
And was this woman like a judge or
she ended up, she owned, I think she might still actually own an agency in Atlanta, a kids talent agency in Atlanta, and it ended up I signed with her. Yeah. So it all happened at the same time, which is wild thinking back on it. I started doing pageants, which then I started doing the singing competitions in there, and then doing modeling, lots of random things for all sorts of Zatarain's red beans and rice and bowling alleys. I mean, I had an AMC? It's a movie theater. Anyway, a bowling alley ad that ran until I was 15.
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of it either.
People
listening know
I
what it is.
remember my mother still, she was like, you got another residual check until I was about 15, and it ran for over 10 years. So it just kind of all happened. And then the singing really, I think, started to take precedence because it tended to be where I just shined, I think, the most and what I was naturally drawn to. So I started doing more singing competitions and things like that on like the local scale. And then it became, oh, hey, can you come sing for this thing? Can you come sing for this? I did. I sang at fashion shows for like when people have like bridal events.
Yeah.
I would get up and sing country songs and while the models walked around, I sang the national anthem at probably every sporting event locally in the greater Snellville area. Exactly. I took technically my first professional job when I was in the 3rd grade for the Atlanta Olympics. When they came to Atlanta in 1996, Coca-Cola built a theme park, which is where now the Georgia Aquarium is. But they built an aquarium a theme park. Right. And next thing you know, I'm a part of a singing troupe, and like we could talk for years just about my childhood.
Just about that. Who were you watching? How were you getting better? How were you getting better with your stage presence and your just general technique?
I think I've always been a sponge, and I've been lucky that over the years, I've come across different people throughout my life that have inspired me in different ways, different teachers of sorts. I worked with a woman named Robin for a long time out of Atlanta, and she was like a vocal coach to Monica and Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey. I worked with this man named Bill Newberry, who I met when I did my first audition for Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat when they needed a kids choir. He and I have worked on, but he was like my musical theater mentor, and so I still work with him to this day. He still lives in my hometown. Another man named Bill Monroe was a local singer and vocal coach in Atlanta that I got a couple lessons in with him. And you know, it was just kind of intermittent. Jan Smith Studios, who is an artist coach, she works with, Rob Thomas, Justin Bieber, all these really big major pop artists. So it was kind of all these different genres that I got to soak up and kind of have made me kind of the chameleon I am now.
Yeah. It was more than just vocal technique though, right? We're talking like how to hold a microphone or how to communicate with an audience or, any of that.
I think a lot of that just kind of happened.
Yeah. It just happens. Okay.
Because I don't have any memories of anyone telling me
specifically
what to do. I do remember my mom a couple times being like, okay, you can't just stand on stage and just like stare into space. And I do remember her specifically saying that at one point. I was like, oh yeah. That makes sense. People don't want to see someone just staring into space. Yeah. Okay. And I've always been a natural ham bone. I, as a kid, never met a stranger. And I have very vivid memories of sitting in Atlanta traffic and rolling down the window and asking the car, do you want to hear a song? And before they could even say yes or no, just starting to belt out Patsy Cline to them. Crazy. Just at the top of my lungs. It's like, what? This child is insane. So my mother just tried to filter it, I guess, a little bit, or funnel it towards a source.
That's so cool. But it's so crazy too, because in a matter of 10 years, 6, right, was the first one. By 16. Yeah. We're like, the national vocal competition.
Yeah, nobody knew what Idol would be.
Yeah, no.
I just saw these posters and I saw this girl singing and I was like, wow, that's what I need. Yeah. And by that point, I had been doing a lot in the Atlanta area with the Grammy Association. I just wanted to learn because my mom said, well, if you want to do this, let's do it. So started going to all the Grammy conventions and doing all sorts of things. I sang, I danced, I went to open mic nights, anywhere that had a microphone. I was like, let's do it.
And this is a decision you made before even seeing an American Idol audition?
Yes.
So this is like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was all just a part of it. And
it was like you were ready.
I was, but I didn't quite know what for.
Right.
But then I don't think any of us were ever truly ready for American Idol.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of, by that point, we had kind of, I think, reached where we could reach the ceiling of what Atlanta was offering. And my vocal coach at the time, Jan Smith, and a couple other Atlanta people we knew were kind of like, she needs to like go to the next thing. Like, but what does she want to do? And I begged my mom to let me audition for this show. And I remember her saying, no, this is a horrible idea. Why do you want to go on a television show? And I had done one a year prior that was a weird kind of, it was a national show, but it was still on a much smaller scale. And I was like, I learned so much. This time I can do it. And it's going to be off the air next year. I have to do it now. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
But no, it's an interesting, I think they've done, you guys would know this, they've done a wonderful job because it can be cheap. On television, competition can be cheap, and that is not.
No, Idol had all the money.
But even like the prestige of it, it wasn't like some, it wasn't, not that The Price is Right is cheap, but it's got a very, it's very serious.
Yes, a very high
TV
production
show.
level. Yes.
And so, what are you? Just standout lessons, I guess, maybe from like the first auditions or as you progressed. Were there things you were learning, ways of being you were witnessing of people around you?
I remember watching a lot of showboaters, for instance, especially waiting in line. Everyone wanted their 5 seconds of fame, and I get that. And I knew that's not what I wanted. I've said this actually throughout my entire career. I don't want to be a shooting star. I want to be a Milky Way. I want to be the galaxy. I want to have highlights of my career that span 50, 60, 70 years. And I knew that for some reason, instinctively early on, because I remember even there was a young man in a Winnie the Pooh costume running around the Idol auditions, singing to anyone who would ask, but he was taking their attention in the wrong way. Yeah. And I just thought, okay, I'll just show what I can do when I get up there. And I just waited my turn, and burned in the Hawaiian sun where we auditioned, and got up there and sang my little part, the ballsy 16-year-old white girl singing And I'm Telling You, because they said this is a pop show, not a country show. And so I had to like learn some pop crossover hits. And I was like, this song will do it. Okay. It did it. Yeah, she stopped me and she goes, the woman at the table said, stop. And she motioned over a camera crew, and they came over, and she goes, okay, do it again. And you only have about 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's like booths, right? Or so.
It's the cattle call is the first round. There are a bunch of tables under tents, and they point one way, yes, and the other way is no. And you get up, and they used to go. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. And so I had seen several other people that were in line before me that I thought were great singers not make it past that. And I remember thinking, oh, well, maybe this is the end of the road. And who knew? I mean, it was just the beginning.
Yeah. What was the, I know, cause it's it was very authentic having the reactions are real, but there's also grooming that goes on, especially as it gets more into the televised final. Where was that balance, or how much input did you start to receive? I know by the end it becomes very, time coded.
Oh, we have zero input the entire time as the singer. Yeah. You are completely documented and formed into a character, and you don't even know it. Yeah. Especially because this was the early days of reality TV, so people didn't. We as humans didn't understand like that's what the TV show needs and what it wants to become a successful TV show. And Idol was really lucky the first few seasons, my season in particular. They just had natural lightning in a bottle. These natural occurrences of people that were like characters. And then they slowly over the seasons, they start to kind of produce more. But I didn't realize at the time I got produced into they were showing, okay, well, she's this pretty, pretty princess, Southern belle. She does pageants. She's, rich white girl. And I was like, what? That's not really how it goes. But we also weren't allowed to watch TV. We weren't allowed to watch TV. We weren't allowed to be on computers. We weren't allowed to read magazines or newspapers. We were told it was to protect us from all of the things being said, which in truth, that was the beginning of the decades of trolls and things like that. And they had a couple people have really hard times with that early on in the first 2 seasons. And so, but you're in this bubble. So you have no idea what's going on outside of the world you're in until you come out of it. So it wasn't until I went home for my top 3 home visit, which by that point, I mean, it was almost, 8 months since my first audition. And I'd been in LA when I went for the first live show after making through Hollywood Week and all that jazz. Yeah. The first live show started in February. I didn't leave for 3 months. So I had no idea how much we were plastered on the cover of every magazine, on every newspaper, all over the internet, everything. We had blown into these stars, and I went home and I was like, what has happened here? I didn't quite think this through. I don't know what's going on. And it was, I mean, it was really overwhelming, and to be honest.
Yeah.
But it was the start of a whole new chapter.
What did you do in your free time? Did you have free time in LA? What was the downtime?
There was very little downtime. We all lived in a house together, which I think that was actually the true reality show.
Could have had cameras on that.
Thank goodness they didn't, because it was wild. You know, we had 4 people underage.
Yeah.
So we all had parents in a big house in the hills. And then you had, we had 8 females and 4 males, I think was how it ended up being, and the top 12, which the next season they ended up doing 6 and 6 for the top 12 to kind of balance it out. We were the last kind of female heavy group. And so there was one large room with all the ladies in there. Exactly. And one bathroom between all of us. My mom and I had a room. Leah LaBelle and her mom had a room. And John and his mom had to share, had like a suite on the other side. And then Jasmine and her dad had another suite. So they could be close to one another, but obviously they didn't want to put them in the same room. So it was just... that was wild. You never knew what your schedule would be. You just were told you have to be camera ready by this time. It was usually somewhere between 8 or 9 a.m. that you had to be ready. And they filmed everything.
Yeah.
Every time you walked out of the door. Strict curfews. So, you know, you had to be back by 9:30, but you didn't have a mode of transportation. This was pre-Uber or Lyft or anything. My mom ended up renting a car because she was like, I'm losing my mind. I have to get out of here.
Yeah.
And so she would kind of do grocery runs. But we had someone that cooked for us and things like that. But it was never on the same schedule. So you didn't know if lunch was going to be at 11 a.m. that day or if lunch was going to be at 3 that day. And you didn't really have much control of anything, let alone how you were being portrayed on TV.
Jeez Louise. I didn't know all this. Oh, Lord. Okay, so then right after, you know, we get to the end, right? We do runner up. You get to the very end. What's the conversation there with family? I mean, you're riding the crest of that incredible journey. Was there like we're gonna ride this out? You know, what was the conversation to continue forward in a direction?
Well, it was just my mom and I, and so she was just like, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
And so we had complete faith in the system that we were a part of, which was Fremantle 19 and whatever they had created through Idol.
Yeah.
Little did we know that there wasn't really a system set up post Idol. It's kind of like the only analogy I can imagine would be like an NFL player. They get injured. Okay.
Now what?
Mm-hmm. There's nobody there to go, okay, let me be your financial advisor. Let me be your mentor. It's just kind of happens to be whoever comes into your life. And I was with the big agents. I did the big record deal. I did all the things that I thought I was supposed to do. But I was just being told what to do.
Did it feel right? Or did
no,
it feel
it didn't
right?
feel right.
No.
And my mom knew it. And so she kind of agreed that we would do what we were contracted to do, and then we would be done as soon as possible. And I was lucky. My mom was a federal court reporter for several years. So before we get on the show, you have to agree to your contract. Yeah. So you don't know what contract you're going to get until you get off the show. And my mom had asked early on, she was like, well, what if somebody doesn't want to be with that company anymore? Like, you have to give them a way to leave if things aren't going well. And thank goodness for her for that. 6 months after the release of my first record, I was able to leave everything, which was scary and relieving because we just realized we were on different pages and
of course,
we wanted different things. And they saw me as one kind of artist and I saw myself as a completely different artist. And I needed a chance to step away. And it was so much happened so quickly. I was like, wait, we need to recalibrate here. Yeah. What are we going to do with life? Because life is happening as well as career.
I know it's fascinating to like just look at life in photos. And I know, you know, at 16, the way you're seeing yourself is very different than now. But there's now more than ever, even like the branding of your name and Gemini, it's like it has become so you that it's undeniably anyone else but you.
Well, thank you.
And how? No, well, you're welcome. But what is is that a spiritual conversation you're having? And I don't mean to make it religious or anything like that, but how are you finding center of self and keeping true to who you are, through this journey, and having the confidence to be like, that's not who I am, even if it turns down, thousands of dollars?
Well, okay, so I've always had this envision of myself, like you said, who you are.
Yeah.
Post Idol, right immediately after, I definitely had lost that. There are so many things happen. It just all happens so quickly, and you can't even take in how many phone calls and how many people are not coming at you, but coming to you for this, that, and the other. And I was very lucky. My mom was great about reminding me, go take out the trash, go clean your room. And there are times that I definitely resented her for that. I mean, being a teenager, who didn't,
yes.
right?
Especially a teenager that's been on television.
Oh, God, I was like, what? And she was like, go take the trash out. So I thank her so much for that, because I know some of my contemporaries that came out or had careers that kind of spiked at the same time, names that I will not mention, are not where I am even now. Like they've gone on, and unfortunately, many have had terrible adult lives. And I think my hardships of leaving my record label, not knowing where my career was going to go, what was happening by 18.
That's a lot. That's
was a blessing in disguise in a way. And that's actually how I came to the theater world. Was I had lost what I wanted to do as a singer and as an artist in that realm, and I needed structure. I was a kid that needed structure again. And I remember my mom was like, well, don't you want to write another record? And I was like, no, I don't want to go into another recording studio ever again. I don't want to go on tour with my own music. And that's what I had loved my entire life. And I had just switched agents, and they had some a couple phone calls about Broadway or different auditions and things like that immediately after Idol, because, kind of enterprising off of that.
Yes,
and
of course.
Those didn't pan out, which I think was a great thing.
Thank God.
Thank you, God. And so this agent was like, well, why don't you just come up to New York and go in for some auditions and see what happens. Maybe learn some things. And because I had done some theater as a kid, but on a very low community theater scale. I had never obviously been the lead of a show in anything. And she was like, and this agent and a couple other Atlanta friends said, that's just kind of what you could learn a lot. You could do this. And I thought, oh, okay. And that's literally how I stumbled into theater.
Wow. But it felt right.
It did.
Because you said yes.
It did. It was I had a couple auditions that went horribly bad. I mean, horribly bad.
Like, we're talking like forgetting music or just plain old nervous?
I think nervous because I had no idea what I was doing. And, it was the first time being in a room in that situation where they're like, okay, well, now do this. And you're like, your brain's exploding on the inside, and just kind of, backing out politely going, thank you. Oh, God.
Those work sessions.
Yes.
They're like,
You're like, I don't even know what just happened, but I need to get out of here as soon as possible. But then the first casting director that actually worked with me, her name is Gail C. And from Wood Chicken C. And she, I have to really thank her for the credit she's given me, because she was the first casting director that was like, hey, let's have a conversation as humans. You can do this, this, and this. I wouldn't do this, this, or that. Because no one had told me. I had no idea. And she was like, you could do this, but this is what you need to do it, how to do it. Not giving me the job, but then I ended up booking my first job with her. So
what one was that?
That was West Side Story.
It was West Side. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that was a shorter stint.
Yes, it was a regional theater in San Jose for like 2 months. Yeah. But it was the moment I did that process, I was like, yes, this is what I need to be doing.
What did you love about it?
I loved the structure, the attention to detail. Yeah. I appreciated everyone's work ethic. Yeah. There were no like, oh, can we do that a second time? Can we do that again? I mean, yes, nobody's perfect the first time, but they expect people brought their A game. They were professional, lovely to work with. I made some lifelong friends in that production. And it was the production where my mother's family was from. So my family, my grandparents got to come to the show and things like that. It was just a really neat, magical experience to kind of go back to the town that I grew up visiting my grandparents and like go there with the Broadway show. They call it Broadway, Broadway show and perform it in front of my family.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was really cool.
And was that a defining moment of like, oh, we're on this is a proper direction.
Yes, it very much so was. And I was still doing one-off singing gigs and different engagements of that sort. And even had a manager at the time that was like, no, we're going to get you back in the studio. I was like, yeah, that's I'm going to go to this audition over here. And just kind of slowly segued in because I didn't know who I was as an artist or as a person, but I knew I could put on a character and I could live in that person's shoes for a minute. And that just felt right.
Yeah. It does.
It does. It's great.
I happen to agree.
And it was so fun. I had not had fun in a minute, and I remember that's a big, epitaph of my life is like fun. I want to have fun. Life is too freaking short to not. Because I get it. Life's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows, but I would like a few every now and then.
Yeah. Have you gotten better at scheduling joy, like scheduling time for?
Yes, I've had to. Because it is easy because I am a workaholic. I know this about myself. I am a very driven human being. I now have to remind myself, it is okay that on Saturday and Sunday, I don't do anything. Yeah. And my husband and I go on a hike, or we go fishing, or we just go wander around wherever we are. If we're in New York City, what are we going to get into today? I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, because that's life.
Yeah. Well, it's finding that balance.
Yes.
Because if you can't bring yourself to what you're doing, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Exactly.
So what was this journey then into Hairspray? Was this pretty...
They were pretty back to back. Yeah. So I did West Side Story, which thank God went okay. The one and only time Diana DeGarmo will ever be singing a soprano part. Ever. I remember doing it. My mother was like, I'm just so proud. And I said, I'm never doing that again. That was the only part that nearly killed me. But got done with that, and the phone started to ring, which was great. They were like, okay, she's clearly interested in something that had come up a year prior, but I was very lucky that I was in enough of a spotlight that people were wanting to talk to me. Mm-hmm. And I ended up actually going in and auditioning for the Brooklyn National Tour. That was not going to happen for another 6 months. Right. So I went in and I did that audition, and they're like, great, it'll be the summer of 2006. And this was the fall of 2005. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And 2 weeks later, I went into another audition for this little Broadway show called Hairspray. It ended up I was supposed to be auditioning for the film, and went in for the team for what I thought was the film audition, but it was the same creative team. Right. And they called a couple days later and said, or actually it was that day. They were like, by the way, do you want to be on Broadway? And I was like, what? Huh? Is this how this happens? Like, they just call you and ask you if you want. And she was like, yeah.
Nice and easy, right?
Yeah, but granted, it was another one of those auditions that I thought I had to completely ruin because it was the taxi strike, and I didn't know in New York City, and I had never been on the subway before, so I walked like 30 blocks to my audition. I was late. I was sweaty. I got there. I'm like, hi, I'm here to audition. And I didn't realize, but at the time there were all these Broadway stars in the room. I didn't know who anyone was. And I'm like schlepping in all of my pink luggage because I was that girl and going for my audition thinking I just ruined it. And I had never seen, I had seen the show. I take that back. I had seen the show, but I had never gone in for a Broadway audition. So I wasn't sure if I was supposed to do something different or what. And I couldn't remember how the show went. So I just figured, well, I'm just going to wing it and see what happens. And 48 hours later, I had a contract, and I think about 2 months later, I joined the show.
Wow,
it's wild.
That is it's a wild story. It's fun. It's fun when life happens for you. I guess it's always happening for you.
It is, yeah.
Depending on what it is, we say it's happening to us, but
yeah. And I think at the time, if I, looking back, hindsight's always 20/20. And, but I think I was asking for a change, and the universe or God or whoever said, okay, this is what you need. And I was able to take this turn into this wonderful community. And I know, being a reality person coming into the Broadway world, I didn't go to school for this. I didn't grind my teeth up through regional theater like a lot of my friends have, and different ways.
yeah.
So my first few weeks with the show were really not so great. The cast was a little weird with me because, of course, they're all these hardworking Broadway,
And this
heroes.
is a high art form, and who is this for?
It is, and they're in this megawatt hit show.
Right.
They're like, who's this girl just strolling up in here? This 18-year-old thinking she can come in and do this job. And I just kind of had to prove myself. And luckily, people, in the end, I think for the most part, were pleasantly surprised.
What did that teach you about human communication?
I think I
What
learned.
did you learn, I guess, yeah.
But it also reflected back to my Idol audition. It was like, let my work speak for itself. I don't need to prove to you that I'm worthy of being here. I know I'm worthy of being here, and my work will prove itself. And I think that's just kind of what I guess I've done throughout most of my career. It's like, okay, I know what I can do, and you do what you do, I do what I do, and let me just do what I can do at my best. And if that should be enough.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then something else will happen. It's fine. It's like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, no, that's so true. It's so true. What did, and this is jumping back a little bit, what did your mother teach you about kindness?
Oh, well, she was always big about you treat everyone the way you want to be treated, no matter who it is. And if I was ever a jerk or a turd to someone, I mean, she definitely let me know it. Like, that was not, and she was great about, as a kid, we spent Christmases feeding the homeless. We volunteered a lot. We weren't necessarily religious growing up, but we were involved with the church that did lots of outreach and things like that. And I think just being around people from different walks of life. My dad's side of the family is very Southern. My mother's side of the family is Northern Californian. Two very opposite types of people. And just, growing up in a diverse life, even in the South, I think just helps kind of teach you that without you even knowing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And having empathy for other humans who have completely different thoughts,
Yes.
thought processes. Was that mind? I mean, that must have been mind opening for you, going from, the South to like LA, or even visiting family.
Oh,
Are there are there any thoughts that come to mind in terms of like things you learned or anything?
Oh, golly.
Where to begin?
Where to begin? What I loved about New York was that even if people are abrasive on the outside, they're gooey on the inside. Because the city is so hard, you have to have a shell in order to just survive. And I get that. Yeah. But on the inside, we're all still human. And if you see that the human gooey center, all will be fine. Yeah. LA maybe might be the opposite. I had a hard time with LA. I still have a hard time with LA.
It's like an onion. No.
Yeah. It's beautiful, and I just find so many people get sucked into the quote unquote industry of it all, and what can you do for me? Not who are you? Hi, my name is such and such. They don't want to connect on a human, but it's because they're trying to survive. So I've learned, I've discovered that that's why they put up this whole front of, I'll eat you before you eat me kind of mentality.
To protect myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting, and that's why I don't live there.
Yeah, it is.
We go back and we visit, and we have family there, and I'm fine there for a little while, but after a minute, it's like there's just so much here, dog eat dog, but not even at the, like, even in New York, it might be dog eat dog, but you can still share your bowl. They're still going to go, okay, if you really need to eat, come on, come on, pizza rat. Here's a piece of pizza. Or, it's like there's always still a grain of humanity in New Yorkers, and that no matter how hard or crappy life is, they always have. LA, they're working on it.
It's a little different.
A little different.
Yeah. Well, coming from just the South in general, so hospitable.
Yes.
So open.
Yes. I mean,
There's always
I've been
smiles and hellos
made
on the
fun
street.
of my whole career for why are you so nice to people, and why do you say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am? I mean, even on Idol, they verbally made fun of me every week because I say yes, Mr. Simon, or no, Mr. Simon, or yes, sir, no, sir, and that was another thing I didn't even realize was becoming a characteristic of my portrayal on the show. Was they're like, look at her, so Southern. I was like, well, that's just my mother taught me. You say yes, sir, no, sir, please, thank you, and if I didn't, I got a thump to the back of the head, It's like,
So you're like, I'm gonna.
And then I learned, like, but that's how people want to be treated, even if we, if some folks do make fun of that. That level of respect for another human is what we always have to hold on to. And I think a lot of the world sometimes forgets that.
Often. So it's good to remind them on this show.
A little mutual respect goes far.
It does. It really does. When you lose focus, how do you get back on track?
There's a reason we live in Nashville. We don't.
And there's the answer.
Yeah, we do. I love what I do. I love traveling. I love being on stage. I love entertaining people, but that is my touchstone to reality. Because when you go back to the rest of the world, wherever that might be, they don't care about any of that. They don't care. Like, Mother Nature doesn't care how much your show cost or how hard you worked on that character. It's like, oh wait, none of that matters. Okay. So that's kind of how I just have to go home and kind of recalibrate sometimes, and refill my cup of sorts, and just remember what's important. And to me, that's my family and our happiness. And if something is clearly affecting one of those, then I need to make a change. But at the same time, we always have to remain, my husband and I both are true to this, about being true to ourselves and what is going to make us happy. And we're very lucky, very, very lucky that most of the time we're on the same page, but not always.
It happens.
Yeah.
We're humans. Have you gotten better at saying no to things?
Yes, I have. It's always hard because I have been the person asking as well to for people to do things, and yes, it's always hard for me. I'm such a people pleaser. I'm a number 2 on the Enneagram, if anyone is into that. I'm the helper. I am totally a helper. Yeah. Most of the time to my own detriment, but yes, no has been a powerful answer.
Yeah.
And just learning to that, and having faith, whatever that faith may be, and that the right thing will come at the right time.
Are you checking boxes? When you're presented with an opportunity, does it fulfill?
A little bit, yes and no. I mean, there have to be. I guess the basics would be, financially, is it worth me to go there and come back? If I'm losing money going to a venture, what am I gaining in that? In replace of that. So it's
a
like
good question.
It is a balance of art and commerce, but it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to go out into the middle of the woods and do a show or whatever for X amount of weeks and basically come home negative X amount of money. Yeah. What am I gaining? Am I going to be getting a chance to challenge myself? Am I going to get to work with really cool people? So you just figure out what's the balance. And I think anyone has to realize, what are you willing to give or take on any circumstance? And particularly, we're lucky in our industry. We get the chance to weigh those options with each contract as it comes. And sometimes you have to, go, oh, okay, well, that didn't quite balance out how I liked, And that's just life, because it's never going to be perfect. No scenario is going to ever be 100% perfect, because life isn't perfect. So you just have to, kind of give and take, choose your battles, and go with your gut.
Yeah. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Gemini. And we got to touch on this. Watching you and Ace perform was just, I want to say theatrical, because there was a story. It wasn't just, I'm up here, these are my feelings, I'm going to share. It was not even very choreographed, because it was just some of the stuff that was happening on stage with the shoe or the champagne, or like just all that stuff.
Life was happening on stage.
But the way you roll with the punches is like, it was like, it's a masterclass for any performer, to like just be, you were present. You were just present.
And I think that's what we have to do.
You rehearsed, right?
We did. But yes, being present, I think, in life is something we always take for granted.
Yes. Being present in life is something we take for granted.
And
always.
You have to, yeah. And life had thrown quite a few curveballs leading up to that performance on the 5th. But all of that hard work, life is never 100% perfect. So no matter how much you strive or try to imagine or have these expectations for what it should be, it's never going to have that. Nothing will ever have that. No. Life, that is not life. I think the sooner we can throw expectations away, the more happier a lot of us will be.
Amen. Yes.
It's it's that line of expect the unexpected, all that woo woo stuff. But they have little bits of truth and even the day that we got up to the show, 13-piece band. We wrote my co-writer Dylan Glatthorn was also my music director, so he had not only written everything, but he had arranged everything for every part of the show. Yeah. We were just having all these little things that were wild and wacky, but we were prepared. And I said, we're just gonna have fun. And I told the band that. Again, fun, my epitaph.
Yes, it is.
I said, if we're not having fun, or if you, for some reason, are stressed about something, please tell me, and let's figure it out. Because if you're not having fun, I'm not having fun, and sure as heck our audience isn't going to have fun.
They'll smell it.
They will. They can. They can, it's like they can sense fear. So we just rolled with it, and my whole life, who would have expected, my shoe was going to break, my in-ears kept falling out, the champagne shot across the room. You just went with it. Part of it was a complete blur, but it was a really fun night.
Yeah. Are you proud of that?
I am. I want to do it again so I can maybe just do it again, because I had so much fun. And I want to say it was such a blur because so much was happening and life was so wild leading up to that. We lost our dog a week before. And so my brain was kind of in this weird fog of, okay, I'm here. I'm doing what I've dreamed of doing. I've spent all this money to be here. I'm paying every single person because it's self-produced in every way, shape, or form. But I want to do it again because we got such a great response and we had such a good time. And now we just got to line it up.
Yeah. What were there things you learned along the way with creating that album? There were, but any standout lessons on preparation or work ethic or anything that comes to mind in reference to the album?
Oh, okay. In preparation, patience. It'll be right when it's right. We live in a day and an age where everything is created immediately. We show on social media our lives immediately happening.
Everything, yeah.
People, can text you and be like, hey, I saw you went to the grocery store today. You're like, how? Oh, well, you put it on your Insta story. So there is always this constant need or delivery of information. And so while creating it, I, of course, felt that energy of, oh, it's not ready. It's not done in time. And Ace, my husband, was a wonderful coach, and he also produced the record, which that was a big old set of reins that I thank God I didn't have to do because he controlled me, or not controlled, but he oversaw me and the band and the sound and everything, and
putting out fires,
literally, and then creating those that needed to be. And, he was great about it'll be ready when it's ready. Don't try to put the cart before the horse. Don't just because you think somebody else needs to hear it now. The timeline will happen when it's meant to happen. And that can be hard to stop yourself and go, no, is it ready or is it not? And the record, actually, we did a round one technically, right after I that was actually 2016. I was doing the Marvelous Wonderettes here in town. So when I got the idea for the record, started writing with my co-writer. In the middle of that, I got offered an incredible opportunity to go to Asia and do Jekyll and Hyde in Korea. Awesome opportunity, but it was leaving in like a month. I was like, oh, crud. Okay. Well, I want to do this record, but we were only 6 songs in. Well, they, the Korean company I was working for, said, well, we really want you to have a record to sell. They were all big about the whole pop star thing. And I said, I got a new record. We're going to make this record. So in a month, flew to Nashville. We recorded the first 6 songs, slapped them together. I left for Korea. Ace is back in Nashville with our mixer and communicating with Dylan and figuring out those final mixes while then coming to Korea for my opening of the show.
My Lord.
Yes. And and it didn't quite come out the way we wanted it, but we were on a time crunch and the show was like, well, we need these CDs. We want you to sell them. And at the time I was like, well, maybe we should do an international release and blah, blah, blah. And Ace was like, let's sell these records on this tour and let's revisit this when we get back. So all the CDs sold on the tour. It was just a few hundred copies, nothing big or major. And when we came back, I was all gung-ho, like, okay, on my birthday, I came home like 2 days after my birthday. And he was like, okay, we're going to do a release. And he's just like, let's sit down. Let's listen to it. And I said, you know what? I actually think I want to do more songs. So I went back up to New York, ended up writing 8 more songs in just a couple days with Dylan. Then we decided to do a full album. And long story short, several years later, finally in 2019, the whole record was released. And I look back now and thinking, oh God, if I had released that record, it wasn't ready. Yeah. But in my mind, I was so eager to please someone. Right. I didn't even know who it was, but I just felt like I was behind the ball on something. And Ace was the voice of reason going, let's make it right. And when it's right, it'll be timeless and then it won't matter if you release it now or if you release it in 20 years.
It is definitely timeless.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. And we worked just really hard on trying to make it authentic and make it feel real.
I know those words are used so much that they don't sound authentic, but it's like you have to see it to believe it. You know,
do.
to see you to believe what you're saying is it because you are.
You.
I mean, you're simply yourself. Thanks. And that's what I love about like chatting with you or even Ace. It's like you guys are so you that without trying to be a type, you've become one. So then people are like, get me a Diana DeGarmo, get me an Ace Young. But you guys are so centered.
Well, thank you.
Which is difficult in this industry and in this limelight. I don't know what's lime, but in the limelight,
Yeah.
I wonder if, and as we're going to be wrapping up here, advice that you would give to a performer or someone in entertainment who in the line of maintaining a sense of self and being true to yourself.
I think it is good to have a tribe of people in your life. Life is impossible to manage by yourself. We are we're tribe creatures. I've been reading a book called The Sapiens, and it's like I'm like, yes, I'm so into it. It's like so weird and woo woo, but it's great. But we need people around us to survive, especially in an industry or a city like New York. You can't come up here and just expect, well, I'm an island, I'm going to conquer it all. No, it takes a village to live, let alone to survive. And I think the more diverse and wild and wacky your tribe is, the better. I feel like we've been really lucky over the past few years that not only is our family, our biological family, all from different walks of life. They all do different things. They all have different beliefs. We don't find ourselves centered in one group of mentality, but our friends that are our chosen family are equally as diverse. And I think as a person and as an actor, that gives me so much more perspective. So when I go into a show, I can go, my friend that does this for a living in East Tennessee that has never been to New York in their life, that's how they would have handled the situation. So me as an actor, I have an entirely organic, again, another word that's been abused.
Yeah,
but
abused, that's the term, yes.
point of view,
Yes.
but that's somebody I love and I care about. So I think it's important to find your tribe, find your people that you know have your back as much as you have theirs. And they don't all have to be performers. A good portion of them might be, and that's cool and great. Yeah. But I think having that is really important.
Yeah. In life, and you might have just answered this question, what's most important to you?
I would say that man right there, Mr. Ace Young, my better half. He is the most important, and that's my teammate, and that is my ride or die. And so whatever it takes to just make sure we're healthy and happy is what I'll do.
I love that. Thank you.
Thanks
for chatting with me today.
Thank you.
Last one, metaphorically speaking, I know we've had so many phrases and themes this conversation, but metaphorically speaking, a word or a phrase that you'd put on a billboard for millions of people to see.
Oh, I'm gonna have to think about this. Give me a second.
That's fine.
Because it's hard, because I'm like, do I want to be funny or do I want to be serious? Because that's the Gemini in me. I could be either one.
I mean, it could be a digital billboard. It could change.
Digital bill, yes.
It could change.
That would definitely be what mine would be. Okay, let me think. Life isn't that serious.
Life is not that serious. Isn't that serious. I love that. I love that.
We put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect or to attain some goal. It's like, you know what? Guess what? We're all going to die one day.
None of us are getting out alive.
None of us. We're not taking any of this with us.
Yeah.
The only things we are taking with us are what we've learned and what the experiences and the memories and legacies we imprint upon other people.
So have fun.
Yeah, so have fun. Don't be so serious. It sounds like the Joker.
Yeah. No,
Maybe that's why I like it. Don't be so serious.
But it's true. I mean, but you've had such a balance of it, you know, because it's infectious when I watch you perform. You know, the love you guys have is infectious. I mean, like you could feel it that night when you guys did the duet. I was like, it's just infectious because it's so sacred and you take it so seriously, but you don't. But you have fun. You know, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm not articulating that well, but I really like life is not that serious. It isn't that serious. I love that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up here? Did we kind of...
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking this time.
Of
I know it's like
course.
time is non-refundable. And I think I said it to Ace too. So thank you for sharing this time with me and these listeners. I know someone's going to learn something
Well, we're happy to be here for sure.
from this conversation. So thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Diana DeGarmo.
You've been listening to Entertainment X, the podcast. You can follow Entertainment X on Instagram at _EntertainmentX_. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join Clay next week for another curiosity conversation on Entertainment X. Thank you for listening.